Excellent. Finally, it's working. So if you catch this on the replay, my apologies. I've been trying to actually start this live stream for a good half an hour. Not really sure what's wrong in the ether today, but it matters not. Hello, 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 and welcome. Got my microphone. Don't quite know where I'm going to put it though, because my desk is different today. I'm in a smaller space, but that should be fine. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Sacheen. Welcome to the channel. It's been a while, but I have a lot to talk about. The news has been blowing up, literally blowing up with um, kind of dire warnings, right? About so many things that are happening. My particular field for the past 15 years is higher education. That news, not good. But it's not just higher education. So many industries are proving to be unsafe havens. And that's really catching a lot of people off guard, especially people who have invested a lot of time, effort, and energy into getting themselves ready to succeed in certain fields, only to find that their niche is niching them on out the door. So today we're going to talk about the 5 reasons why I think it's time for you to seriously consider quitting your job. Not just because I think it's fantastic for you to go off and do something new, but because there are some significant canaries in the coal mine about the way that the economy is shifting as we move further into post-COVID, new world order of working from home, rampant profit. Sorry, I have my allergies are kicking up, so just excuse the stuffiness. Inflation's on the rise, but so are profits. And those things going hand in hand means that we're looking at a shifting landscape of possibilities. And you got to ask yourself, how do you want to ride this out? Where do you want to end up? What do you want to become as we shift further into what's coming next? I'm Dr. Sacheen. For those of you who followed me before, you know that I started out as a post-divorce coach for women who were getting a divorce from their narcissistic spouses. I have since shifted into a post-career transition coach. Me. Basically, I talk to and help Black and brown women realize that they are wasting the best years of their lives working for someone else. That it's time to start thinking about taking the best years of your life, turning them to the next best years of your life by doing the things that are most important to you, which may mean a lot of things, but quitting your job should be top of that list. Check out all the things that I offer at the link in the bio. My link tree's out there, all the books that I've written on the different subjects, from the anxiety solution for those who suffer from anxiety, to overcoming imposter syndrome, to the magic of starting over, all available for you at the link in the bio. I also want to shout out Stephanie Perry of Exodus School, and she is a house sitter who I follow here on YouTube. I'm going to link to her video that she did about why jobs aren't loyal, and why you really want to think about why you're insisting on being a part of a lot of organizations and industries that are not going to be loyal to you. And I'm going to pull this. The first thing I'm going to rip directly from a couple of headlines. Okay. Excuse me. So number one, remember that, again, my field is higher education. So I'm talking about this from the professional ranks, from those of us who have been lockstep, who got the advanced degrees, who signed up for the corner office, or if you're in academics, at least an office not in the basement, and who dedicated a lot of years of schooling to get to a certain place. If you read any of the headlines coming out of trade publications for professions, Chronicle of Higher Education, anything to do with the law review, organizations that are dealing with new MBAs, newly minted MBAs, what you've been hearing for a long time is the fields are saturated with people because we all bought the dream that that this advanced degree was going to get us somewhere really, really important. So we went out there and we got the degree, but the fields that we thought we would be in, they're kind of stagnant. And not only are they stagnant, man, there are some things going on in those fields that are waving the red, white, and blue flags, going, hey, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. You might want to hang on a second, because that degree you're getting may not be worth the paper it's printed on. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you need to think about quitting these professions. And I'm talking about any of the professional professions. I don't care if you're a lawyer. I don't care if you're a doctor. I was a college professor. So I'm speaking I'm an expatriate from the tower. I'm speaking to those of us who have put in the time in the trenches to get something that ultimately is going to end up costing us way more than it's serving us. So that's the first thing. The headlines are speaking, right? I was just reading in the Chronicle just the other day, a great article called The Toothlessness of Tenure. And if you've in higher education, if you know anyone in the higher education field, tenure is the god. That is what you're going for. But less than 1% of people who go up for tenure actually get it. And here's the rub: tenure is no longer the safe haven. But I'll get to that. I'll get to that. Secondly, look at what happened on Twitter. And I know I told myself, don't talk about Twitter. Don't do it. Don't do it. But it's kind of important. And it's not, and I'm going to talk about Elon Musk, and it's not because of how I feel about him one way or the other. But here's the deal. Corporations like Tesla, like Amazon, Google, the big ones, the ones that we think, oh, those jobs, if you're just doing your job and you're putting in the grind like you're supposed to, you can pretty much write your ticket. Take a look at what is happening. Musk announced that people who don't come back to work, back in the office, they could lose their job. A lot of the rumblings on the boards that I follow, the Twitter accounts that I follow, who are people in the C suites of these companies, are looking at this going, this is a backdoor way to cut some of these positions. In the name of restructuring and getting back to normal, a lot of the secure jobs that people thought they had pre pandemic are going away. And the security that we thought was there, not there anymore. And that leads into point number one about why I think that you should quit your job. And that is, job security is an expensive gamble right now. It always has been an expensive gamble, but especially when you get into the professions. And for those out there who are going to say, well, I didn't go to school and get all the degrees, and I self-taught myself, and because I learned this and that allowed me to reach this position. And that sounds great. You've dedicated yourself to your craft, right? And the gamble is, I would get into a company where I'm really good at what I do, and I can hone my and I can help that company grow, and I can help that company reach, and they're gonna take care of me. There is a level of job security. Well, we know from the bubbles that come that job security has always been a myth, but for some reason we forget. We think certain industries, especially in the professions, we think certain industries are kind of bulletproof. And here's the deal. Here's the rub. Some of them used to be pretty bulletproof, right? You got tenure in academe, you were pretty bulletproof. And if you are in higher education, you've seen a lot of really troubling and problematic things happen over the years to tenured professors that in any other industry would have taken them out, would have cost them their jobs. Didn't happen because tenure, again, was this kind of bulletproof thing. And in other industries, you get to be chief resident, you get to be partner, you make junior partner, you make partner in a firm, right? You get these titles and you think, okay, barring some major explosion, I can pretty much get away with about anything. But the reality is, in this day and age, job security is a really expensive gamble. Most people are not going to be at a company long enough to attain job security anymore. And that is a sea change in some really big industries, because it used to be you might go into something and work your way through, right? You get that the MBA, or you get that JD, and you get that PhD, you get your foot in the door, you go, okay, now I'm going to march. I'm going to march up that ladder. I'm going to get this. And pretty much, as long as I don't do anything stupid, I'm going to be able to ride this gravy train. I'm going to get that big house, and I'm going to get these nice cars. I'm going to be able to take vacations. And the reality is, so many industries are top heavy. They have a whole lot of folks in them who are vying for the same scraps. And the scraps from those tables are getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, to the point where it becomes, and this leads to my second reason why I think that you need to think about quitting your job, it becomes a race to find the cheapest workhorse. Oh, this one drives me crazy. Every year, I look at job reports, especially since the pandemic hit, and especially in the area that I'm most familiar with, but I look at all of them and I see the number of people we are graduating from schools with MBAs. I'm not going to tackle the undergraduate world because those kids are going to get their degrees, because that's all we have left for them to do is get a degree. So they have to get it. They have no choice. I'm talking about those of us who come out of law school, come out with our engineering degrees, our advanced engineering degrees, who come out with our JDs, who come out with the PhDs, who are going, okay, I'm here, I'm ready. And you look at the job postings and the salaries are abysmal. And this is before inflation. So I will take you back 5 years. Let's talk about pre-COVID. The rate of pay in entry level positions for teachers, professors, fresh faced PhDs, fresh faced, rosy cheeks, got that PhD, newly minted, got their publications going, pew, 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 knocking them down. You might be lucky to make $60,000 a year, but you're going to have $150,000 in loans. Same goes true for the MBAs who are fresh faced, scrubbed, and they're going to go into HR, they're going to go into R&D, and they're going to get in there, they're going to use their business acumen that they got with that grand degree, and they might make 80,000. Yeah, that's pushing it. More like 65. But they've got $100,000 in student loans because companies have figured out something very important. There are way more of us than there are jobs out there. And what they want are workhorses who will work for cheap, which is why it always astonishes me when my Facebook friends will send me job listings for things with all of these qualifications. Literally, like we want a degree in this and 5 years in this and 3 years in that and this certification. And you need to know this coding program and know how to write in this language. And you know what? The starting salary is $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And I can hear it now. But Dr. Sacheen, hang on a second, because in my field, ask yourself this question. Does everybody in your field start where you started? Chances are they're probably not. Less than 1% of the people who start a PhD program complete it. It is rarefied air. I know it doesn't seem like it because it feels like we are cranking out advanced degrees, MBAs, JDs, PhDs in all kinds of fields. We are cranking them out, and we are cranking them out. But a lot of people come in and not a lot of people come out. So you would think, oh my gosh, this is great, right? I'm going to be part of the few that is going to come out. No, because there aren't enough jobs anymore for all the ones that we're cranking out. And so it really is a race in organizations to get as much work as they can squeeze out of you for as little money as they can pay you. I am on Twitter watching the lamentations of seasoned professionals in all kinds of fields who are now looking for work because they've been restructured, because these jobs are not loyal, right? Restructured. All of a sudden there's redundancies and you're not needed, so you can shift over here or you can go look for another job. And they're looking for new jobs and they have all of this experience. They've given the best years of their life to an organization. They can't get an interview because I need a workhorse season, but I only want to pay you 85. You might be used to 150, but I can just hire your younger counterpart with less experience, work them for a good 5 to 7 years of their life, just squeeze the best out of them, and then hire another one. That happens entirely too often. In higher education, it's, well, I mean, if you don't want to take this job back, down in somewhere backwaters of country town for 560, then great, take a job at one of these wonderful universities that are in these beautiful places like New York and San Francisco and Lake Tahoe or someplace cool and exciting, but we're only going to pay you $55,000 a year. So you can't actually live where you work. That's not a thing. And that's really important to keep in mind. This idea of getting a workhorse in organizations, bringing in these workhorses for cheap, it's really important when you start thinking about not only are you not making a lot of money, your cost of living, depending on where you are, is so high, you can't even afford to live where you work, hence the 2-hour commute. Because what else are you going to do? You got to get to work somehow because you took the job. And so the second reason why you absolutely need to start thinking about the fact that these jobs are not loyal is because they will replace you in a heartbeat for a cheaper, not a better, but a cheaper version. Much cheaper, because they can work another person for a good 10 years before they figure out the same thing that you already know, which is these jobs are not loyal. They're not going to take care of me. And in the end, I'm not making enough money to justify what's happening to me in this position, which leads me to the third reason why you need to quit your job. I have a list. Number 3, The most productive and creative years of your life are being given to a job. Who does not appreciate it? The most productive and creative years are being spent on jobs that are not going to reward you in the way that you deserve to be rewarded. It's not going to give you what you deserve to get from it. And you can be cut off from so many things only to come back and realize at the end of it, what do you have to show for it? What is it that you have to show? There are, and this one actually breaks my heart a bit, because in academics, in a unique way in academics, in higher education, we rely heavily on graduate students, GTAs, and this is also in other schools, but also adjunct professors. And a lot of you out there who are professionals are like, oh yeah, I've adjuncted for blah, 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 blah before because I worked for a law firm, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a dentist. And this, and the chiropractic school asked me to come and talk to their students about body alignment, or, oh yeah, adjuncted for the business department at my alma mater. Great. You're cheap free labor. Congratulations. And you think you're giving back, right? Fantastic. I'm giving back to the students. This is a great way for me to get my foot in the door teaching. You are allowing the university system to do this, to use cheap labor, workhorse labor, to fill the gap, because they're not hiring enough tenure professors anymore, because they don't want to, because tenure people are expensive. Not when I can get an MBA from down the block at this Fortune 100 company to come down and teach 2 nights a week. I can sell this to my students. And you're giving the best you've got, the best years of your life, not realizing you are making pennies to do this. Number one, you're not reaching them who you think you are, because chances are you're teaching students who have to take this class because they have to fill a credit. More importantly, you have worked all day and now you're adjuncting 2 or 3 nights a week, or potentially all weekend, and you're tired, because especially if you're in academics, not only might you be tenure track, you might also be adjuncting someplace else just to make your ends meet every month. And chances are, if you are working if you are junior level in a law firm, or you're working in a corporation because you've got your MBA, you've got your little corner cubicle, you're also picking up some extra classes, some extra work, because making those ends meet, that's a tough one, right? Especially with that student loan debt is right here. And so when you stop to think about this, some of the most productive years of our lives start between about 30 and 45. Okay, maybe a little bit further, maybe a little bit further. But some of the most productive time frame. A lot of people spend a lot of that time working hard for somebody else, ensuring that someone else's bottom line takes off, flourishes, and gets successful without remembering or realizing, hey, wait a second, there are there's what's going to come back to me here. What's going to come back to me? I'm A great example is a young woman who realized that her law firm was billing her time at $400 an hour. Let's do some math. Okay? So let's say you work for this law firm, $400 an hour. But $400 an hour, and you are billing, I don't even know how many hours a week or how many hours a month, but let's just say you're billing 60 hours a week. I don't think you'd bill that much, but you probably wouldn't bill that much. Let's say 30 hours a week of billable hours at $400 an hour. So for 1 week's work, you could conceivably bring in $12,000 for your law firm, or roughly just under $50,000 a month for your law firm, right? Times that times 12, that is $500,000 a year. That's worth giving some time for, right? Until she realized she's making $120,000 a year. So $576,000 a year minus her salary means that her firm, who's not doing the work, is pocketing $456,000 a year on this not even junior partner. cut it in half if you want to and say they're billing her out. Well, they're probably not billing her out at 200. They're absolutely billing her out at $400 an hour because that's what she knows. And so her $120,000 salary is minuscule, and she's just one person. And here's where the rub really starts, right? All the nights and long weekends and all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into the JD just to get in the door. And you pass the bar, you're in the door, you're in there doing the law that you've gone to school for. Those billable hours start and you're making $120,000 a year. And this feels like a complete lottery jackpot because you've made such little money before this. And for the next 5 to 10 years, if you are lucky enough to make junior partner or rise in the ranks somehow, perhaps you will begin to get your billable hours will get increased and your salary will increase. But you will never, ever make as much money as the firm that you work for. You will never pull down that $500,000 from that firm. So why are you working for them? Is it because they can bring you clients you can't get for yourself? Is it because they're marketing you as this hot shot and you are this special? No, because to hear her tell it, she's just one of many lawyers on staff. I work with attorneys. I work with women who are attorneys who are the owners of their own firm, who are pulling down north of six figures, north of that $500,000 mark every year. And they have junior attorneys working underneath them. And I will tell you, they have dedicated the best years of their life to building something for themselves. What they were not willing to do was spend the best years of their life building something for someone else. Which leads me to number 4. And that is 9 to 5 is a myth and you are not getting paid for it. If you reach the professions, as I like to call them, which encompasses a whole lot, but you know what I'm talking about, the professional class of work. When you reach the professional class of work, there is no such thing as 9 to 5 anymore. There is when I get to work, which might be between 8 and 9, possibly in the morning, to when I leave, which might be 5 or 6. But that briefcase, that backpack, that laptop, that iPad, that Galaxy is full of work. And I'm going to take it home. And I'm answering emails at midnight and I'm on the Slack channel at 10:30. And yes, it's Saturday, but I need to check in on just this one thing just to make sure it's ready for Monday, even though my work week technically is over. Because remember, when you put people on salary, the expectation is that my time is now your time. And 9 to 5, the idea, well, I get up, I go to work, I go to the gym, I come home, but I'm always checking work email. So you're still working for work, even when you're not at work. Because when you begin working, sorry, I'm hooked up to the charger. When you begin working at all hours of the day and night, you're no longer off the clock. You're never off the clock. You might be at the gym, you might be out for happy hour, you might go shopping with your girlfriend and have brunch on Sundays. But if you go home after all that and you spread out in front of you work, then you have in fact given over all of your time to someone else's bottom line. And the reality is you're not going to get compensated for that. These are the things I love to hear from organizations. We do team building exercises. We do morale boosting exercises. We throw company parties. We have a softball team. We do charity and we encourage our employees to go volunteer. And in my mind, I always think you literally monopolize 85% of your employees' time. And it is just disguised as something else. That's all it is. It is literally just disguised as something else. Because, of course, you can work someplace fantastic that has slides going down and vegan cafes and wheatgrass bars and pool table and foosballs, and you can take naps and you can bike around campus, but you are literally on campus for 12 to 14 hours a day. So the insidiousness of number 4, that 9 to 5 is a myth, is that when we've turned work into life, then you have no idea where work stops and your life begins. And because of that, so many of us, when the pandemic hit, people started to go nuts because all of a sudden there wasn't all the things to do. that consumed you that were work related. Everybody just had to sit down and stay home, and you just did your work. Middle managers were on Twitter fire like, what are we supposed to do with ourselves? Slack channels were going wild. People trying to figure out how do we keep, what do we do? And the rush to go back to the office for many people is because work and life are all the same thing. There's no separation. There's no demarcation line that says I go to work, I go to work, I go to work, I get off work, I have a life. We have taken that away. And we've taken it away by making the promise, back to number one, that job security is yours for the taking if you'll just agree to this contract here that says, I will work 40, 80, 60, whatever hours. I'll never turn off my email. I'll always be available. I won't take vacation days. And if I do, I'll check in. I'll be available for a conference call no matter what. I will do what it takes for that job security. But remember, job security is an expensive gamble. It's a very, very expensive gamble because number four says 9 to 5 is a myth. And so every hour you spend at work, whether you're working at work or playing at work, you're still at work on somebody else's bottom line. Now, I'm not going to get mad at the organizations who figured this out. They absolutely have figured out that capitalism works. And we can squeeze a lot of work out of people if we can just convince them that work is play. And when we convince them that work is play by holding all this stuff at work that feels really good and allows them to interact with people and feel good about themselves and gives them a sense of identity, then we can, when we ask them to pull a 14-hour day, 3 days in a row or 7 days a week, or don't take that vacation, or at least if you take that vacation, take a laptop with you. When we ask them to do that, they're going to feel very much like, oh, this is my family. Work is my family. Work is where I have all of my life. And so, of course, I'll do whatever is necessary to actually stay in touch. Which brings me to number 5. The fifth reason why you need to quit, because these jobs ain't loyal, is that work should bring a better life. And when in fact, all it really brings is indentured servitude. One of the things that haunts me about many of the stories that I read are the people who are like, I make all of this money and I have a lot of really shiny things that I don't get to use because I'm just not home. I get up, I go to the office, I go to the classroom, I go to campus. I'm there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And when I come home, I'm exhausted. I don't have time for a lot of extracurricular thing. Throw a family into that mix and you can hang it up. It's all over but the shouting. Exhaustion, fatigue, sleep deprivation, all sound like things that happen because you have kids. They're happening to people just because of the amount that we work so much. And to be indentured to work because of the amount of money, quote unquote, that you're being paid for the privilege of holding a professional position is great until you realize in order to hold this position and to do all this, have all this money, I don't actually get to enjoy most of these things. I occasionally get to drive that pretty new car that I really, really wanted. It looks so good in the driveway. But gosh dang it, those payments are something. They are something else entirely. And I don't really enjoy the car. I have the car, but I can't enjoy the car because I really just drive the car to work and home. And I'm a car girl. I love to drive. I love to get out on the open road, or at least I used to. Not as much that anymore. But I love the feel of a good car, the like under your feet, the roar of that engine, the feel of the power behind it, or even the smoothness of certain cars, just the way they glide on the road. These are great sensory experiences. The problem is that a lot of people have money to buy wonderful things, beautiful homes, big TVs with all the latest technology, Oculus, hanging out in the metaverse, playing games, all the things that they could want to do. And they might get 2 or 3 hours a week to do it, maybe a month to do it, if they're lucky. And they'll count that, you will count that as having done something, right? Like I got 3 hours this week where I could just fill in the blank. I could enjoy the fruits of my labor. Except, are you really enjoying the fruits of your labor, or are you worried about all the things in the back of your head that you're not doing because you're enjoying this thing over here? Things, something that you've paid for, or something that's really important to you because you've worked so hard to get it, and yet enjoying it feels kind of like you're betraying the thing that got you here, which is the job, the thing that gave you this, which is the job. And so this number five, this idea of work bringing a better life, is probably one of the hardest ones to put your finger on, because you get to decide what's a better life for you. You have to decide what's a better life for you. But it's not a better life if you're making $120,000 a year and you've got a cute little apartment that you can barely afford in New York City, or even worse in San Francisco, but you can't enjoy any of it because you don't have any time or space left in your week to actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. So you stack it all until you get a 2 week vacation, and you blow all out and hopefully have a great time. And then you come back for 6 more months, another 8, another year, where you just have to keep going until you can take that next vacation. So what do I want you to do? Well, I want you to quit your job. But what am I supposed to do? So let's say someone out there is watching, and first of all, I've heightened your anxiety like crazy, and for that I apologize. But if I've heightened your anxiety like crazy, and you're like, I've been thinking about these things. I've been thinking about what it might look like if I restructure my life. But what's the first step? What should I do? I'm going to tell you some things, that at least 2 things that I think you should immediately start thinking about. Number one, you should take a break. For a lot of us who have been in the professions for 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, we have forgotten that there is a life that exists outside of it, that there is actually a whole life that exists outside of our profession. Number one. And because of that, and because of the way most professions indoctrinate us into our work life, that we have no balance. And so I think the first thing you have to do is swing from one extreme to the next. And someone out there is going to go, I can't, and do what? Quit my job? Well, yes, that's the point of this video. But I'll give you something different. Take a 3 month sabbatical. Take 3 months off. If you don't have enough vacation time, which, if you are a working professional in America, chances are you have a month of vacation time stored away that you're just not using. You might even have 2 months of vacation time stored away. And I guarantee you, if you have 1 or 2 months of vacation time, you probably have sick leave you have never even dreamt of using because you don't get sick. What is that all about? So one of the first things that you need to think about doing is taking 3 months off. However you want to structure it. Quit the job, use all your vacation time in one fell swoop, use all of your sick time in one fell swoop. Get in there and say, hey, I'm out. Like, I need a mental health break. You've got to swing the pendulum back the other way to break out of the fact that you have been doing this for such a long time, right? So the first thing is I would suggest you take at least 3 months off, if not 6 months off, because the first 2 or 3 months that you take off from your job, from quitting or taking that extended mental health break, you are not going to know what to do with yourself. Most of us who have been working for any length of time haven't had a vacation or a real break, a real honest to goodness break, since we were probably 18 or 19. Raise your hand if that's you. You have been working in some form or fashion for someone else literally since you're probably 18, 19, for sure by the time you hit 2021, which means you have probably been working, depending on your age, if you're in your 20s, maybe almost a decade, depending on where you are in your 20s, in your 30s, 40s, 50s. You've literally been working so long. Do you know what it feels like to not have to get up and report to someone else? And so the first thing you have to do is decompress. There is an extraordinary community out there being spearheaded by a couple of fantastic women that are talking all about career breaks and sabbaticals. And I strongly encourage you to follow them and to dive into their messages about what it means to reclaim your bliss and to find yourself after having given all of yourself to jobs that are not loyal to you. I've covered it all. I covered why they're not loyal, why they're never going to be loyal, and why you need to stop pretending that they are loyal. But to help you kind of take that first step of, well, how do I transition out of a job or a career or profession that this is all I've done, this is all I know. There are a lot of resources available to you. And if you are like, I am literally feeling super anxious right now, I do not know what to do. I do not I do not know how to do this. I don't know. You're talking to me in a foreign language, but I know I need to hear you. You can book a call with me, but you can also pick up my book, The Anxiety Solution. There are a ton of resources available in the world to help you make this first step. But the first step is you need to take some time off. Don't tell me you can't afford it, because listen, I happen to know for a fact that a whole lot of us have money sitting around that we could afford to take at least a couple months off, but we're so afraid to do so because we just don't know what we would do with ourselves. So it's probably not about the money, and it's probably not about the time. It's about the fear of what other people might think if we all of a sudden said, I quit. And not only do I quit, I'm taking the next 3 months off to find myself. Ooh, to find myself. Think about that. When is the last time you took time off to find yourself? Excuse me, these allergies are killing me. When is the last time you actively decided to go find out who you were outside of your profession, outside of your job? So you take some time off. That's the first thing I recommend. The second thing I recommend is you then decide what to do next. So many times, and I'm going to keep stressing this, especially because these jobs are not loyal, but mostly because the best and most productive years of our lives given over to someone else's bottom line means our bottom line is always at someone else's mercy. And I'm not a proponent of the hustle and grind culture. I am not a proponent of, continuing to just labor on because that's what everybody else around you is doing. That's not my shtick. I don't believe in that. I did that. I've done that. I have the gray hair to prove that. This is mostly something else. What I do understand though is that if you took half the time, this is why, back up in there, number 3 is about the most productive and creative years of our life. But if you say took a year off, 6 months off, and then you decided I'm going to reimagine what it looks like to be a teacher. I'm going to revisit what I dreamed about when I decided to become an attorney. I'm going to make my bottom line, mine, the most important bottom line up above anyone else's. I guarantee you that you will make vastly different decisions about what to do next after you take a break. If you still decide you need $500,000 a year, remember the equation that I did earlier? $500,000 a year because that's the lifestyle that you want. How do you get that so that you actually are getting $500,000 a year? And it's your $500,000 a year and not somebody else's. Maybe you do decide to go back to work, but you had to go back to work in a completely different environment, a completely different industry. Maybe you decide it's time to start my own thing because you have literally, you have the degrees, you have the skill sets, and you have the know-how, and you have proven that you know how to make it work for the bottom line of somebody else. So you have all the things necessary to make the bottom line work for yourself. And so I suggest that the next thing after taking the time to just breathe and release and get bored and get squirrely and let those phases pass and then get to peace, the next thing that you do is go, what do I want to do? How do I want to live? What do I want? Maybe I need to travel more. Maybe I will decide to open a travel agency because I want to travel and see the world. And that's really more important than going down here and working on Wall Street for another 10 or 15 years. Maybe you decide to become a day trader because you've worked on Wall Street. You ain't making no money on that floor, on the trading floor, but you have all the skill set and the insights. So why am I not starting my own brokerage firm? Why am I not, like, you see what I'm saying? Like you get to figure out how to make the bottom line work for you and not just work for somebody else's bottom line. But you can't get that perspective as long as you're still in the race, as long as you're still under the gun. And if you think you can't possibly make life work without the hustle and grind of corporate culture and the cultures that want to chew you up and spit you out, I would suggest that you just take a quick tour around YouTube and you look at the families who have retired before 30, retired before 40, with kids, living their best life, not hustling and grinding, but making smart decisions and realizing at some point that they could either continue to do things one way and just keep playing somebody else's bottom line, or they could do things a different way. And I could list a ton of them, and I'm not going to because they're all out there. You find your favorites. And so the third thing is I think that starting a new venture, starting a new business, taking that side hustle and turning it into your full time is always going to be the next step. You're never going to find a job that's more loyal to you than you are loyal to you. Let me say that again. You are never going to find a job that is more loyal to you than you are loyal to you. Now, I know that there are some organizations that people have been at forever. Their names are legendary. They were there at the beginning, but that's the kicker, right? They were there from the beginning. They know the founders. They've been a part of the inner circle for a long time. Chances are, unless you're in that kind of startup, that's not you. You can create that kind of startup and build something amazing with other people. Collaborating into wealth is a thing, right? Some of the best and biggest organizations are collaborations of genius level people coming together to create something, or taking the brainchild of one and combining the skill sets of other people so that we all rise together. The competition that's fostered between in the professional classes with the scarcity mindset that these jobs are so great and they're so scarce and they pay these great wages, but you got to give us your whole life. That is not how you have to live. That is not how you have to live. It is not what you have to do. And it's not how you have to function. You can actually have a business that you can live in a way that makes you whole, happy, healthy, and wealthy. But you have to decide how that's going to look. And you cannot do that as long as you're contributing to the bottom line of somebody else. So that's all I have for today. I wanted to keep this at about 45 minutes, and it's at 41 minutes and counting. And so take some time, go back over this video, really tell me what you think. How are you feeling about your jobs these days? What's going on in your industries? Give me some ideas of what's going on out there so that I can keep my finger on the pulse. But understand and know that no matter what, if you are in the professional industry class, and that's really what I'm talking to, if you're in that class of people, you know how dire things have gotten. And you know that it's not going to get much better with the rise of the remote worker. It's like, oh, but things are going to shift. It's going to get better. No, businesses are already talking about cutting wages because people don't have to commute, which means people who've lived in New York and San Francisco and really expensive places and got paid really, really well because of where they lived and the commute and the cost of living. These folks who are now remote, possibly, are hearing the rumblings of, well, maybe we're going to start cutting back on those salaries because you don't actually have to come to the office anymore. So that means you don't have to live in New York. So I don't know that that cost of living at $700,000 a year, and yes, that's a real salary. I don't know that that's necessary because you don't have to do all the things that you used to have to do for that salary. So maybe $500,000 a year would be much better. And you know the problem? Most people are going to take that pay cut and keep it moving because they're going to go, well, where else am I going to make $500,000 a year, even though now I'm struggling like crazy? And if you think it's a struggle at $500,000 a year, go ahead and say it. I get that. I'm not saying that that's kind of far fetched out there, but I will say this: I live on the East Coast. Those kinds of salaries are not unheard of. The reason that they're out there is because of the cost of living on the East Coast is astronomically high for a lot of people. And so businesses have compensated for that, for the fact that they own your time and they keep you at the office for so long that you literally own 85 to 90% of your life. Therefore, paying you a salary that you can barely see anyway makes no difference. You're making 3 times that amount of money for the business. So paying it to you is it's a no-brainer. But as the world shifts and changes, and if remote continues to be a fairly large segment of the population, I guess we'll see how this shakes out. Those big salaries are going to start to shrink, even while the cost of everything continues to grow. Now, I do want to, before I sign off, because I'm going to sign off, I'm hungry, I got to go eat. On the word of, we're possibly heading towards a recession. What about inflation? Quitting is ridiculous. I will say this to you: you're bound to a job which keeps you bound in place. It keeps you believing that this is the only way life can go. Therefore, I have to make enough money for this version of life to be the reality because I don't know anything else. Taking time off will allow you to expand your understanding of what it means to live and live well. The whole globe may be in an inflation, but everybody's not suffering equally. Every country is not going about it the same way. So, yes, you're in the professional classes because you know how to do two things really well: analyze information, it's out there, you know how to do it, and pivot. You know what it took to get through grad school. You know what it took to get in the door. You know what it takes to climb the ladder. Can you do those things and shore up your own bottom line? Or are you determined to believe that a company is going to keep you safe in changing seas? I will always bet on me. You should bet on you. That's it for today. Again, please let me know if there's anything that I've covered that you have questions about. I'm always open for chat and conversation. So drop any questions that you may have, and I will be back to see you. We're going to try, this is Friday. We're doing lives now every Friday and every Tuesday. So I'll see you all on Tuesday, but look for another video before the live. Thanks for tuning in. Dr. Sacheen, signing off.